And now we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Earthster training session. Today, I have with me Filipe, our data scientist, and we're going to tell you about the latest feature updates. We're going to start with that, about the new updates, and also, in the meantime, I will demo how to use Earthster. And whenever you have questions, please remember to post them in the chat area. If you have any issues with your video, just reload your page and get into the live area again, and you will be able to continue watching the video and asking questions. We answer as many questions as possible. And today we're going to have a fun session. And for those of you who are the first time watching this series, this is designed for you to learn to use Earthster. And Earthster is a collaborative LCA tool that you can do also eco design together with your team and together with your supply chain. There's a lot of cool features, and you'll get to see part of them today. And I'll give the speech now to Filipe to show off what we've been doing lately.
Hi, Hajnalka. I'm Filipe. And I've been working on this update. I'm very excited about this one that is soon to be out. So the update is for those who know, there's this database USEEIO in Earthster. So now there's a new update coming to Earthster. To USEEIO. So it will be USEEIO 2.1. But first, what is USEEIO? Maybe some of you know about EcoInvent, or most of you know about EcoInvent. EcoInvent is a database of processes for which there's already lifecycle assessments, and it's the most used. It's very high quality, and you in EcoInvent there's like 18,000 different processes that anyone can use for their life cycle assessments. Well, USEEIO is different, and I think it complements very well with EcoInvent, in which EcoInvent has really good data for each process, but sometimes it might miss some processes, and that's where USEEIO comes in. USEEIO, well, it stands for United States Environmentally Extended Input-Output Models. So it's based on in economical data for the US, and you typically in input-output models you have the economy divided into different sectors, and you know how much cash flows from each sector to each sector. So we can kind of consider each sector to be a process here. And if we have environmental data for each of these sectors, we can also calculate total impacts per sector. So that's the usefulness of USEEIO. We can kind of say that it's kind of extensive, and it's extensive. It covers the whole economy. But well, cycles are very generic. They are not. The inputs of each cycle are other sectors of an economy. So they are generic, but they can be quite useful when we don't have that cycle in our LCA analysis.
Should we, Filipe, show how a cycle looks in Earthster?
Yes. So
here, now you're sharing your screen.
So this is a cycle.
Exactly. What you're seeing now, what Filipe is showing, is a cycle created from a template. And you can, in Earthster, you can use either ready-made templates based on the USEEIO data, or you can create them from scratch.
Yes. This one it's the cycle of $1 of automobile, how much impacts it has, and we can see that it has $1 of automobile. It produces 2 kilos of almost 3 kilos of CO2. So yeah. Well, there's UCO is much smaller than EcoInvent, although it's very extensive. So it's 471 cycles in this new update.
And with cycles, you mean data sets?
Yes, data sets. Yeah. Yeah, so we can say that, yeah, EcoInvent has finer information, but UCO has more generic information. And UCO was already in Earthster, but now this update, it was UCO 1.0, and now it's UCO 2.1. The main differences are that, for instance, economic data are previously it was from 2007, and now it's from 2012. And then there's other differences that we will go through later. But the most exciting differences is that, okay, there's new cycles. Before there's like 40 new cycles in this update. There's some cycles that disappear, but yeah. And what do we have new? Maybe I will go back and create a new. What's new? Well, for instance, before we had this cycle, electric power generation, transmission, and distribution, that it's very generic, and now it's disaggregated into different types of power generation distribution. So we get petroleum electric power generation. We can distinguish the kind of electric generation that we have, and we also have cycles just for power distribution and power and transmission. So yeah, that's one difference, and we have this not only for electricity, that it was disaggregated into different cycles. We have this for wholesale trade. For instance, it's not just one cycle. Now we have 11 new cycles out of wholesale trade, covering different things: machinery, equipment, and supplies, etc. Also for insurance carriers, there's not just one cycle covering insurance carriers. There's now 3. There's the same for housing. Waste management is another huge one. Like
Filipe,
yes,
are you using numbers for searching templates? Is that the
yes.
trick that users should know?
I use this because it's very because I've worked with numbers in this update, and I know that this is the BEA code, so the Bureau for Economical Analysis of the United States, and I know this is the sector for direct life insurance carriers. I can put here the sector number, and it will appear in the search result. Yeah, that's why I put the number, yeah, which is very convenient.
Yeah, so that means that every template has its own number, or there might be several templates per sector.
There might be actually several templates for sectors, because in Earthster we have also extended some of those sectors when we had better distribution data, or disaggregated distribution data, 2 different distribution data for the same process, for instance. Yes, and in this case we get several, because some of them are related. I put this number here, which is the BA code for direct life insurance carriers. And then these 2 others appeared. Well, this one, insure carriers, this was the one that we had before, but now it's built, these insurance carriers, it's built out of it has as inputs these insurance carriers and the direct life insurance carrier. That's also why it appears.
Sounds good. And before we dive deeper, we have a question from Norbert, and he's asking, why do you call a data set slash a database a cycle?
I'm not sure about the answer to that question, but because it's a life cycle. We imagine products as cycles because they go through the production, distribution, and use. And then end of life when they must be disposed and so on. So an assessment should cover the entire life cycle of a product.
Exactly. So the way I would explain it, so in Earthster, every LCA model we call a cycle. And what you see here now, this is a life cycle of a mobile phone. There is the production stage of it, distribution of the phone, and the use itself. I will show this later more. And we call this a cycle. But at the same time, all the data sets from other databases, so EchoInvent, USEEIO, all those data models are basically a life cycle for that process. So, for example, this is also based on a template. So everything here is in USEIO data sets. But what we can do is explore the data. For example, there's one called wireless communication. I click here, explore. And now what you see here is that the database is fetching everything that what is the data point or data set wireless communication is built off, which means that that also has its full life cycle. Not in all of the cases. So you have to check always the information of the process itself, that does it include, for example, distribution or not. And the way the database is structured, everything is added into production stage. Only the templates have the data divided between production, distribution, and use phase. The data sets itself, when you start exploring, for example, an EchoInvent data, everything is production. But inside there, you will find processes related to distribution, end of life. And that's why also processes we call cycles, because they are, in a way, a life cycle assessment of one particular process. Now, let's continue. I'll give you back your screen.
Other news here is that waste management. We don't have anymore only one cycle for waste management. It used to be just this one, waste management and remediation, but now it's several of them. It's all we can see here. Yeah, solid waste combustors and incinerators, solid waste collection, etc. So it's much finer information now. And then there's some cycles that are really new and they were not disaggregated from any previous cycle. For instance, this one is completely new. So yeah, some of them are completely new. And then there's also some data sets that disappeared, and Earthster will now suggest you alternatives when you move from USEEIO 1.0 to 2.1. It will suggest, if you have one of the old ones, which there's 5 old cycles that disappear now. If you have one of those, and if you want to update it, it will suggest new ones. And so yeah, it's 3 of them are related to machinery manufacturing, and 2 are related to smelting, primary to smelting of non-ferrous metals. So yeah, and I think that's the main things with this in terms of data. These are the main updates. Then there's the unit updates. Should we talk about that now, or
I'll show it a moment. One thing I want to show meanwhile also is that you mentioned that when there's a data update, so where do you find those data updates? You go to your cycle, you go click on the mini settings and you click data sources, the last icon here. You click there. Let me see. I'm going to zoom in just in case for you to see a bit better what we are showing you. Here, what you're seeing that in this cycle that I'm showing, there is only data from USEEIO, but there's in total 182 processes. If I click on it, it shows me all the data that's in there. And what it says here that these are all up to date. And these are up to date because I have created this template recently with the latest data. But for example, if I would have had this model already created a month ago, and now there's the new data update, what you'll see instead of here up to date, it tells you that there is a new update available. And what you do is it gives you the option to update to that. And depending whether that process still exists or not, if it's deprecated, so it doesn't exist anymore, it will suggest you that take these other ones instead. So the system will help you choose in case it doesn't exist anymore. Otherwise, what you can do here, appears a button and you just say update all. And everything will be updated to the latest version of the database related to the USEEIO. There will be later on an echo invent update also, and it behaves the same way. But that's not yet live. And also, this one, what you're now seeing, we are both showing you our test environment. So this is not yet live. So if you now log into Earthster and try to see the same thing, you will not see it. But probably by the end of this week, it should be live. And you will be able to enjoy all the latest data, all the coolest things from the USEIO. And I will in a moment demo and explain you the different functional units, or not functional units, but the different units, how the USEIO behaves. And before that, do you have any questions? If you do, please post it in the chat. And we have a tiny delay, so we see your questions a bit later. So I'm going to try to fill out now, so to give you some time to think for questions. And Filipe, is there something else you would like to share?
Did I share the? Well, I skipped one of the group of new cycles, which is state and local government. Just yeah. So before it was just state and local government that we had. Now it's finer information like educational services, hospital and health services, or just other services. So yeah, it's something new. And regarding house, I think I didn't show the housing. The housing, we now have tenant occupied housing or owner occupied housing. Yeah, it was just housing before. So and we did this. I think I covered everything, every new cycle.
Sounds good. And looks like we don't have more questions. That means that let's get into the demo itself. So I'm going to share my screen instead. Okay, so what you see here in front of you, it doesn't want to zoom like this, is, so as I mentioned before, we call an LCA model a cycle. And the system lets you break it down into 3 stages: production, distribution, and use. But with bundles, you can break it down even more. So for example, if you need to show production related to material extraction, assembly, you just create bundles. You go here and you click, instead of adding a new process, what you do is click on the tiny icon and it says either add a bundle or a custom process. Bundles are kind of folders. It helps you structure the LCA. And for example, you can even start building an LCA only with bundles. So it's you know already that this data I will need to find, so you can put it in there already. And custom processes are kind of like smart folders that you can calculate with them. In this template, I think we don't have any. At least I don't remember. Maybe in use phase there is. Nope. This is also. I'll show you in a moment how to do custom processes. But in principle, this is how Earthster looks like when you have already created a cycle and there is data. This one is created one of those USEEIO templates. So it fetches everything from the database straight away, fills it out. And if I would want to utilize this template, my next step would be to go through all the processes there are here and update it to reflect on my production. So if I would be producing mobile phones, now I would have to go through everything and see that, okay, actually, we don't use any coal. And what I can do two things. I can either just zero it out and everything gets updated real time, or I have the option of deleting the whole process. I can just say delete. It tells me, are you really sure? And I say yes, because there is no undo button. Once you have deleted it, you'll have to fetch it up from the database again and add it again. So that's why it's often might be a better idea to just put it to zero. When you have processes, you can always swap them. So let me show you. For example, because this uses the USEIO one, everything is based on US dollars. And for me, I have my data that how much truck transportations we are moving the phones around in kilometers. What I can do is, and also because the EcoInvent is more precise environmental data. So I recommend always to use that when there is available. If not, then use the USEIO. Both, and then you can mix and match as much as you want. And now look.
Can I just interrupt you for a while?
Yes.
There's a question about because you were talking about using EcoInvent before using UCO, and I think Alessandro had a question about whether if we it just appeared, right?
Yeah, I just put it to show. But please continue.
Yeah. So this is a EIO model built for the US. So processes are based in the US, and then impacts are calculated for the whole global value chain. If we are building an LCA for another country, will the model use the US sectors as a proxy, or will it calculate the EIO for the new country? It will use the US sectors as a proxy. So this is one of the. This is a good example of when it's good to use EcoInvent instead, because EcoInvent probably has data for other for a better region sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll show you in a moment how to start from a template, but it's when you're building for another country, you have to, because the template is, when you start from a template, it asks you what is the value you're going to utilize as the base conversion for your template. And for example, in this case, what I have built, if we go to the scale, it's a mobile phone. I said it's one unit that I want to know the environmental impact of, which cost $500. And here, what it specifies, it's US dollars from 2012. So the value of a dollar at that year from a seller's perspective. So for me to produce a phone that cost me as a producer $500. And now the question is that, okay, let's say I'm in Finland producing a phone, a mobile phone, and I want to utilize this template. The main question is that, will you use the same $500, or are you gonna try to create a kind of like proxy that the Finnish industry is much cleaner? what you can do is you can extrapolate the value. You can say that, okay, probably the environmental impact is worth 400 euros or $400. That's one way of doing it. But if you ever do such things, document your assumptions. You always need to put it here in the notes. You document it really well. Why did you choose those? Why are you using as a proxy? But now another thing you can do, so if we go back here, is to swap processes, what I was about to show. But before we go into that, so in Earthster, you can have a production unit and multiple of them, but they need to be equivalent. So I'm saying this one phone is worth $500. But I'm also saying that this phone will work as a phone for 3 years and for 500 charge cycles. That means that when I have set up this cycle like this, every data that I add in here or update, because this is a template, I need to reflect on my production unit and functional unit. So for example, in use phase, there is electricity consumption, and this comes from the template. Now I would have to calculate myself that, okay, so 500 charging cycles, 3 years, how much my phone's use phase it is actually. And let's imagine it's bigger. So I'm just gonna now make it a much bigger number. It auto updates, or it updates automatically. And you can play around with the data and see what happens when you change values. This is why Earthster is super good for eco design. You can change numbers, you can change processes, everything happens like this. And that's an awesome benefit that most of the people love it. Okay, so those were production units and functional units, important to remember in Earthster. Then let's see, there's some other questions. Let me put this one. Lamar is asking, is there a template for Earthster that when home I can be doing practicals, I guess? So you mean that you can practice doing these things at Earthster? Or I'm not sure if I understand the question. Or please specify a bit more, and then we come back to that question. Then another question. So are you saying that it helps to make design decisions at product development because of immediacy of LCA data analysis? Yes, I am saying that. So you can use Earthster for the product development stage when you don't even have the product. You can model that. What if we utilize this supplier's components? What if we take a different plastic? And a good example is, I'll show you what you can do. And I'm going to show you here. This is the actual live app. And I just trained today with this model. So this is a model of a toaster, a simple toaster. And here you can see some examples how you can also do sort of eco design. Let me take off this one so you see better. And I'm going to zoom in this one. Wait, I zoomed in the wrong thing here. So in this toaster model, what we've been modeling is the toaster is for 5 years. I can show you again the scale of this one. One toaster. In that amount of time that the toaster is in use, there's 650 meals prepared. So the use phase is based on that. This amount of minutes made, like the toaster is in use and in hours. So all those are equivalent to each other. That's the most important thing to remember when you're building your. And if you change these numbers, it never changes your values that you have added. These you have to update yourself. So if in the beginning you have decided to model one toaster and along the way decide to model, I don't know, 10 toasters, because that's the typical batch that you sell them in, then you have to by hand update all of these. And this is really important also when you're using the templates we have, the same thing. When you have created a template already with one value, you cannot change it afterwards. If you decide that instead of the $500 phone, you have a $600 phone, you have to create a new one. Unfortunately, that's like that, but it's good to remember. So if you change your mind, or you can, of course, just update the values. But now back to the eco design. This is a custom process that I mentioned before. Here I'm saying that we are making 650 meals. If we go in there, the way it's built, if you go into the info session, it says all information is per one meal. I have calculated that to toast a toast, it requires this amount of kilowatt hours of electricity. Processes, I added electricity, like market for electricity, low voltage. If I click on it, you can see that this is an eco-invent process from Finland. This is how you can also explore data. You click on the info button and you say, you as a cycle. What happens now? It will open this in view mode and I can explore the eco-invent dataset. I can click around and see that what has eco-invent considered to be relevant for electricity production in Finland. And as you can see, you can explore further and further and see all the way to the end of the database that what is this dataset is built of. And this is super useful when you're adding new processes into your cycle and you're trying to decide when you, let's say you have 10 options and you're like, which one is the right one? What you do, you open it in this view, click around, and you might notice straight away that, oh, look, this one has distribution. I'll use that one. Or the opposite. You will not want to use that. So let's go back here. And so this is the basis of a custom process. And because I'm saying that all the information is put based on one meal, here the electricity is put for one meal. Now, what happens if I'm saying that we are going to use it much, much more? We use 1,000, we make 1,000 meals. It automatically calculated it, or instantly, not automatically. And I didn't have to change this at all. So it's a really good way of creating recipes. Or for example, if you have various components in, let's say, actually in this phone, there's 3 cameras. You model one as a custom process and you say there's 3 of these if they are identical. Really useful for modeling. And yeah, so the other thing you just saw, so this simple it is to do. You can say that 650 meals. Now, if you want to compare, like in a simple way with the cycle, look, I have created another custom process. It's the exact match of the Finnish one, except this electricity is from the United States. I could even rename this to be sure, like all the process names you can rename, and I really recommend it, not EU. Wrong one. Exactly. You add descriptions, what you have added there, and it helps you and whoever you're collaborating with to understand what you have modeled, why you have chosen that number. It's important to add these into the descriptions and notes. And look, now I'm saying that, let's see. What if we do the same 650 meals? So we go back here. Meals cooked in Finland with a toaster, 28 kilos of CO2 equivalent. In the US, 66. That's a huge difference. The electricity is produced differently in different countries. So when you're able, always choose country specific. And when you cannot, use global averages, European averages, any of those. And yeah, this is about that. But now let's go back to the processes, the not eco-invent, USEEIO itself.
We have some
Question.
more questions, yeah.
Which one would you like to go through?
So maybe the one from Love More Shaba.
Yeah.
Um, so most products you are using, yeah, the codes. Well, the codes you don't need to know the codes at all. It's the best ways to search for processes is really using the keywords that you know of your product. If you're searching for an automobile, maybe you want to use the car or automobile itself. So the codes were just useful for me. Like it's just another
You're a
convenience.
data
They were
scientist.
useful for me. Um, but yeah, it's true. Those codes are for USA products. I don't even know those codes myself. It's I yeah, I just used to show those processes. But there's also products. There, well, the majority of the products in Earthster are not even from the USA because it's mostly eco invent. So you can surely find many from many other countries, data from many other countries.
Yeah, and I will show a bit how to do it. So this is now the mobile phone template that uses the dollars. What I want to do is instead of the dollars, I want to swap this process. So I kind of know already that I will swap this process into truck transportation from EcoInvent. Now, this search, what you see in front of you, is searches the whole database. What Filipe was showing before searches only templates. There's a huge difference between. So here, if I start writing, let's say, truck, it will look up everything that it can, what it finds. And the search terminology is based on, or the keywords, based on the name of the process and, really important, whatever is in the description of the process. So you might find weird things and you're like, why is this showing? The reason, because there is some explanation related to that in the description, related to the word. And when you're choosing processes, it's really important to read these unless you are 100% sure that, oh, this is the cycle we always use. Now let me show you.
And
So
just to chime in a little bit, the descriptions were also updated, so they have more information now. The USEEIO now ones, yeah.
data, yeah, exactly. And in this search view, what you can see, the name of the process, the genre, a tag, that what type of process this is. This is unique to Earthster. This is designed to help you find the data better. And what you can do is also filter based on that. You see the unit, what is the actual process unit, the geography, you can prioritize based on different ones. Now, if I would want to say, show me Finland stuff, because I'm going to adapt everything to Finland, it reorders my results. And then the last column, you can see that this is an EcoInvent dataset or USEEIO. And you might see, let me see if I take off both. So filtering happens that either you click the check mark, which means that show me only those things, or you click the minus sign, which says don't show me those. And if I take both of these out, there's no results. But let me show you, for example, look. Now, here is a good one. Here the origin says Aris Company. That is an organization called Aris Company. And so you might, if any cycle is publicly available in the system, they show as the origin. So the organization's name will show up. And now, for example, if I take off the USEIO, here you can see Earthster. From us, we have many cycles publicly available that you can use already for your projects. A lot of them are demos, so use it on your own risk. Demos and playing around. But this is the basic principle. But let me show you again. So truck, and I just written one word, truck. You might find straight away what you're looking for, but often you won't. So what do you do next? You specify further. You can use multiple keywords. you can say truck transport. And then you start finding different ones. What helps when you found already good enough that you were looking, you say that show me only transport, thank you. And look, now it started showing me different ones. Transport, freight, lorry. All these are synonyms for transport. And when you've been using enough the search functionality, you know that all the echoing ones, I don't know why, they love to use the word lorry. Different English. And it's important to remember that different databases uses different names, but you'll get used to it. And another trick that I love to teach people is instead of saying transport or lorry or any of those, what I write is euro. Then you'll get the transportation based on the euro coding, the euro standards. And the bigger the number, the newer the car. So for example, here you can see that there are passenger cars, truck transport, all these things. And you can, as you can see, we have 200. So I'm going to say now like this, Euro truck, nothing. It's not called truck. Right here. And we are going to now take any of these, not South Africa, doesn't matter. We're going to take South Africa. So I'm showing now how to change a process. So the next step, when I find something that sounds like what I'm looking for, you read into it, you're like, yeah, okay, this is what I want. Then you say, add process. Now the next thing to do, because I swapped a process, it kept the value, whatever I had in here, but my unit has changed. So now let's imagine I'm transporting, here I need to transport one mobile phone. How much a mobile phone weighs? 300 grams.
300.
Exactly, 300 grams. So what you would do, you say 300 grams, where's my G, times 1,000 kilometers. That would be 300 metric ton kilometers. If I didn't calculate wrong, yes, it's 0.3 kilos. And then that's it. I have now changed one of those to be an equipment data because I have my data in there in tons, metric tons. And I can change all of these. And now what happens next is if you want to do comparisons, what you do in Earthster, you issue a release. Here, look, I'm going to show it again. Here in the bottom, it says that when it was last updated, how many releases I have already. So this version is already release 3. And I can say that I want a new release. No, actually, that wasn't release 3. Here, updated truck transport. Here, you keep notes what you have done. And you should release.
Is that like the same as versions in, I don't know, in a Word document where we can...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So a release is a snapshot of your cycle that you kind of can keep track that what has happened to it. And here you can see that this how much it was. It has grown a lot. If I have had more releases, it would change accordingly. So it's you can see the evolution of your cycle. And releases they don't really change your cycle. What they do is they work as a pointer to something else. So with Earthster, you can create connected LCAs, which happens if we close this one now. For example, we go back to distribution. Let's imagine that my supplier or the one who is transporting our things, I have a good relationship with them and I want to know their actual LCA for that. Instead of using the average equipment data, I want to request the data. What I do is here, fill out, ask for their LCA, And if you use Earthsters requesting LCA, what they get is this. Let me show you as a cycle. If I represented them in my model with that particular eco-input process, this is what the supplier would get to fill out. Just like when we were a moment ago filling out the form template, they would get this process as a template to fill out. So it's painting by numbers LCA. Super simple for the supplier, and then you know that what you got the data is probably better than whatever EcoInvent has, because the supplier has went through the data and seeing that, okay, how is mine related to this one? And they update it. But now what happens is also in that moment, you need to have a release. Until a cycle has a release, it's called that it's in draft mode. So you can do a lot of changes, but there's no kind of like, these push notifications, no notifications being sent. When you do a release, there is one. So it connects to a certain point always. That's why you need releases. And if we go back here, I'll show you the differences. What I wanted to show you today, the comparisons. This, I'll show you before. Let's show this first. What do you think, Filipe? Exactly. Let's explain what's the difference between the new terminology. So in the old, in what you still have in Earthster, it just says US dollars. Doesn't specify other things. What it means is the value for producing that item. In the new version, when you create a new cycle, you want to use a template. I'm going to create now one. Let's use, for example, the car. Look, I just write car. Even here, synonyms work. It shows up automobiles. We could look up other things. So no numbers needed, just write car and it finds it. And I can check the information already if I want to. But what I do is, let's create a car. So I name the cycle car. I click on automobiles. It shows me how it looks, what the cycle already contains. I'll choose the whole life cycle of a car and I click next. Now here is the juicy new part. I'm going to do the LCA for 1 unit, so I can rename this one car. Then let's say I'm going to have, it's a $20,000 car. But now I get to choose whether I'm doing it based on the dollar value in 2012, the dollar value today. So the one that doesn't specify the year, it's now, this year. And there's a difference between, one more thing, difference is the seller versus buyer. So seller is the one who produces the car and buyer is the one who buys it. So there is a margin already on it. And let's just say I'm the buyer. I want to see how it looks. Functional units, in this case, because it's a car, I could say 300,000 kilometers driven. I can add more if I want, or not. So at this point, you can skip functional units if you want. You create a cycle, and that's it. This is my starting point. This simple, it is start from a template. When you're starting from scratch, you do the same thing. You just turn off the template and then all this will be empty. So you get to fill it out yourself and looking up from the database. This is how it looks. I start like changing the values. And one thing I would recommend, that even if you don't find a template for your product, you can use them as inspiration. Check what there is, how is it represented, how it's showed, what's included, what's not. The same thing when you find public cycles, see what it has. There's a lot of good data. For example, University of Twente, they are using it in their student projects. There's several types of bridges, and I love their models. They're so well, like there's all cables and everything taken in account in those bridges. Do it. Look them up and see. Look, for example, if I write here bridge, their cycles will show up. If I say that no echo invent, thank you, and did I write it wrong? No, it's not showing up. Maybe they're deleted. Anyway, one more thing I would like to show is, so I have created the same mobile phone from a template just like a moment ago with the value of the $500, 3 years of use, 500 charge cycles. And I made a comparison out of these different versions so that you see what's the difference between the different values. This is how it looks, a ready-made comparison. The first one, we did something, changed our units. Yes, here it, so I clicked into settings. There you can see what you're comparing and what units you're utilizing. If you have here, there's always a production unit. But if you have functional units, it shows up here. And the first one is straight the template that is not being modified in any way. The next ones are the ones that I have created. So for example, I can, decide to compare one unit versus one unit. It updates the graph straight away like this. And then you're able to compare. And here also, here I'm not able to put because this comes from the database. But the more meaningful one, if we put these, look, so if we compare them $1 against $1, like this, now you can see it really well, that where are the differences coming from. So if you think about it, the US dollar 2012 had a bigger value than the current dollars now because of inflation. That means that because I used $500 in all of them, the environmental impact of the same money spent is now lower than in the other one. This is a bit breaks the brain, at least for me, thinking about this. Why is it like that? But you can see the difference. So what you see between the seller and buyer is the generic margins that the economy has. So depending on your case, whether you're the final consumer and you want to model an iPhone, you put how much you paid for it, or if you're the one who are actually producing them, you want to compare it to industry averages, these are perfect. You add in there your own versions and compare it to the industry average, and you see, are you doing better or worse than your competitors? Okay, we have 7 minutes left and a lot of questions. Let me see, which one should we take? Filipe, did you find something interesting?
There's one about the difference between life cycle and lifetime service from
This
LinkedIn
one.
user. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what lifetime service is. Do you know, Heini? Because
No, actually, I don't.
my guess, but I'm just guessing, is that lifetime service, it seems like to be okay until the product works, right? Until it served its function. Then there's still waste management. Probably that's what it's
Mm,
referring. Do you think so? Maybe if it's that, then there's also waste management processes in Earthster, and especially in USEEIO and EcoInvent that serve that purpose. Yeah, how much does it cost also in terms of impact to uh, manage the waste of whatever product? And yeah,
exactly.
not sure if that was the question, but yeah.
So, in general, a life cycle assessment takes in count everything that happens to create a particular item or service or even project. So with Earthster, you can model services also or any that type. And when it comes to this phone, so before the assembly of this phone, the metal ore has been mined from the ground. That's the first step of the life cycle of this phone. That metal ore has been transported to somewhere to make it into metal. Then the metal has been transported to the factory. Then there it's been assembled, all these little pieces. And that's what we call production. The next stage is distribution. So if we go back to the cycle view, for example, here, the next stage is distribution. That means that the ready-made phone, nicely boxed and everything, is taken to a retail store, and there the people can go and buy it. Use phase includes, let's see, here it just says electricity consumption. It doesn't have anything about end of life, but the life cycle assessment should have. So I'm taking this phone, using for the 3 years, charging it many times. This is the electricity I'm consuming. Then here needs to be also added the end of life. So for example, will I give this phone back when I'm buying a new one and they'll refurbish it? Will I throw it away? I lose it, it's in a ditch. Or will I end up in the trash? Will I put it to electronic recycling? That's basically up to the user. That's why we have combined use and end of life in our modeling template, or what is this, in our models, because it's up to the user. You can say that, pretty please bring it back to us, you get some money for it, and the user has it in their drawer forever. Happens often. And but what you do is, here you would just create a bundle. You say use, like this. Then let's go back here. You take this electricity consumption, you move it under use. You have to find it where it is, the first one here. Now it's under there. It has readjusted the views. Then I can go here under use and create a new bundle and say end of life. End of life. And I add here a new process, electronic waste.
I think you're missing a C, electronic.
I'm missing a C, and look, even though I'm missing one, it knows what to look for. I love it. So, for example, waste, plastic, consumer electronics. Let's just say we add this one. So here you would actually go and read that, is this the right one to add? You click add process, and then you put the 300 grams that we said the phone is. And what you could see now, Earthster works with both dots and commas, doesn't matter. I'm used to writing commas because in Finland that's the way you do it, but in a lot of places you use dots. And it doesn't even complain if you misuse them in one place and the other. And this is how you add a waste management process. But now what's interesting here, if you paid attention to this tiny icon, let me zoom in crazy, maybe even more, like this icon. It says this is an input. But of course, this is what I'm saying, that I'm recycling, I'm getting rid of this. So I have to mark this process as an output. It's getting out of my cycle. And it gives me a negative CO2 equivalent because I'm actually recycling this. So I'm getting credit for it. Let me go back here. And no, here we go back here. I zoom it out a bit, otherwise I'm not able to see what I'm showing. And as you can see, for example, use is an input. You just click on the little icon and then it's an input or an output. And normally the database, all the waste management processes already sets it correctly, but always check it what it says when you're modeling. Okay, any more questions? We are up in our time, but we can take a few more questions and then we have to stop. Let me see. Okay, someone is asking, will there be a recording? Yes, there will be in two places a recording. The event itself, the live events, keep the recording. So anytime you can go back and watch it, you can share it with your colleagues for them to watch it. And then also we will upload it into our YouTube channel. You find it in the link in the description of the event itself. It's there in the bottom somewhere. And that will happen later. What other thing I wanted to mention is sign up already to our next session. That's in about a month. Let me see if I'm able to. Yep, I will post the link in the chat area once we are done. But please sign up. That session will be a bit more specific to the packaging industry. So the examples will be from packagings and similar, but the same style. So there will be an intro, then going through all the feature updates that's happening. We might have by that time parameters. So I really recommend you join. I can't promise that, but there might be. Might be a big one. And what else I would like to say? Any other questions? I think not. Something, Filipe,
Doesn't seem
you
so.
would like to answer? No. Okay. So that's it from our side. Thank you for watching, whether you watched it
Thank
live
you.
or recording. Exactly. Next month, we'll have another one, and other upcoming webinars will be. We will always be organizing. If you have any wishes of topics, please let us know. For example, many have been asking for a specialized session for waste management. We could have a training session on that if there's enough interest. And yeah, go sign up to Earthster. Let me show you the. If you don't have an account yet, just go to earthster.org. You create a trial account for 2 weeks. You get to try out everything, how it works. You get to have in the trial account 20 eco-invent processes to play around with. And after that, it's super easy to upgrade. You can choose your plan, what you would like to have, and start modeling in a flexible and intuitive way. And collaboration and everything. um, yeah, so start modeling. And if you need ever any help, you can email us at support@earthster.org, or even better, use our awesome chat support. You go to help, you click help me, you have a chat, and you might even get a automated message from me. The best way to get support from Earthster. But that's it. Sign up to Earthster and enjoy doing LCAs. Thank you all for watching.